ready for you to start, and we are recording this, and this meeting will be posted on our webpage on the city's website so that folks can access the meeting afterwards. I want to thank, before Shakira starts, I want to thank Tiffany Bradbury, our Community Engagement Manager, for helping host the meeting today. She's also been assigning you into your working groups. So if for some reason we need to make adjustments to that, she'll be here to make sure that happens. Any questions you have, you can type them in the chat box and we'll try and answer them as quickly as we can. But Shakira, take it away. Can we put the
if you happen to be on a computer, I just saw Officer Johnson said that he can't hear. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Or you can use the thumbs up Zoom. Okay, I can see some thumbs up. All right, so the problem might be on your end. But I would like to welcome everybody this morning to our study committee to reduce gun violence. I would also like to thank Tiffany Bradbury for helping to host the space, as well as the work to put people into their groups. We are in unprecedented times. It's no secret that there has been an increase in violence around our nation, and gun violence specifically, as well as here in Roanoke. And so while COVID-19 did interfere with some of our meeting times, behind the scenes, some of us have been working with some of our groups to see what we can do. So nonetheless, we're very excited to get back into the swing of things. We will most likely be increasing our meeting frequency to bi-weekly instead of monthly. And I think that meeting on Zoom does kind of allow for us to have that flexibility where we are able to meet more often. And so I just would like to welcome you all. This is one of our working meetings. And so while we may have some first timers to our meeting today, or we may have some guests, if you have any questions, please feel free to send me a private message with your email, and I would be more than happy to answer those questions at a later time. And so without further ado, I would like to pass it off to Tasha Cobb for our Tasha Steele for our roll call. And if she is not here, then Joe is going to take care of that for us.
Let me thank you, Shakira. Tasha, are you on? She was going to join us late. But I will go ahead with the roll call. This is for study committee members. When you hear your name, please unmute and just say here so that I can complete the roll call. Shakira Williams.
Present.
Courtney Penn.
Here.
Tasha Steele. Nicole Ross.
Here.
Antoine Calloway. Ryan Bell.
Present.
Rabbi Kathy Cohen. Natasha Saunders.
Here.
Jordan Bell. Reverend David Jones.
Here.
Joshua Johnson. I know Joshua's here. There must be a volume issue. Bishop Jamal Jackson. Stacy Shepard.
Present.
Troy Gussler. David Thomas. Yvonne Thomas, Dr. Mark Hamill,
Here.
Reverend Tim Harvey,
Here.
Anthony West, Mayor Sherman Lee,
Here.
and Vice Mayor Joe Cobb. And we have a quorum. Shakira, would you like for me to just carry on with the next item?
Yes.
Okay. As many of you know, the task force was formed by City Council a year ago and had a timeline within which to present recommendations to City Council. We did that in November. Subsequently, one of the recommendations was to have the task force continue its work. And so we did that through a new resolution, which was adopted earlier this year. And the name of our group changed from the Task Force to Reduce Gun Violence to the Ad Hoc Study Committee on the Reduction of Gun Violence. And so our purpose remains the same, and that is to study the presence of gun violence within the city, develop strategies for implementation for the reduction of gun violence, and make recommendations to City Council for actions that may be taken by Council to address the reduction of gun violence. This new resolution is in effect from April 1st of this year to March 31st of next year. Moving on to the bylaws, I sent these out to committee members last night. Tiffany, could you pull those up for me, please? These are basic bylaws that just guide our work together. They outline the membership, the officers. Our chair is Shakira Williams, our vice chair is Courtney Penn, and our secretary is Tasha Steele. It goes over our meeting procedures, parliamentary procedure, all of the basic format of bylaws. If there are any questions, I would invite any committee members to ask those now, or we can entertain a motion to adopt the bylaws as presented.
Motion to accept.
I second that.
Shakira, do you want to go ahead and take the roll? Those in favor?
I would, but I don't have that list in front of me.
Okay, so what is this topic?
If you could just just repeat the motion to adopt the bylaws, and then ask for study members to say aye or nay. We won't do a roll call vote.
Okay. So we do have a motion to adopt this study committee bylaws. And I'd like to ask our study committee members if they're in agreement. Those who are in agreement, please say aye.
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 And those who are not, please say nay. All right, so the ayes have it, and this agreement passes.
Like for me to go on to the progress updates?
Yes, please.
So many of you know that the city applied in cooperation with Roanoke Police Department for a RESET grant, which is a rapid response program for incidents of violence and trauma in the community. That grant was received by City Council earlier this year. My understanding is that applications were submitted for the coordinator position, and that HR is in the process of identifying applicants to interview, and that will likely take place over the next couple of weeks. Once that's done, the next steps will include a formation of the coordination team, and then the beginning of that rapid response work. Regarding the budget, when City Council adopted our budget this year, it included $75,000 toward the work of this study committee. When we move into our working groups a little bit later, we'll want to keep that in mind as the total budget that we have, and keep that in consideration when we're looking at our recommendations and what funding we may need to move some of these forward as priorities. So that's all I have for the progress updates.
All right, thank you, Joe. And I think now we are ready for a presentation from the Roanoke City Police Department. It looks like with that we have Chief Roman here at our meeting for the first time. So I'd like to formally welcome you to our meeting. And they will be giving us an update on the recent incidents of gun violence here in Roanoke, and hopefully we can see a comparison as well to when we first started.
All right, thank you, and it is definitely a pleasure to be with you all today. Can everyone hear me? Okay. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. Thank you for allowing me just a brief few moments to go over some numbers with you as it relates to incidents that includes gun violence. Tiffany, if you could put up, yeah, perfect. Hope everyone can see that. But what I wanted to really just share with you all today, and just a 5-minute update, is the incidents that we have here in the city that involves gunfire. So obviously, these are the numbers that depict the calendar year 2018, 2019, and so far where we are at for 2020. So you'll see the very first category is homicides. So in 2018, there were 8 homicides that involved gunfire. 2019, there were 11 incidents that involved gunfire. And so far, year to date, as of the 13th of July, we've had 4 homicides that involved gunfire. Moving right on down to aggravated assaults, which pretty much means someone was shot but did not die from the result of the gunfire. In 2018, there was 39 of those incidents. In 2019, there was 26 of those incidents. And as you can see, again, this is just year to date from January 1 to 7/13. There has already been 25 of those incidents. The next category is domestic aggravated assaults. So these are domestic related, involving family, if you would. In 2018, we had one of those incidents. 2019, an additional 1 incident, and so far there has been no domestic aggravated assaults that involve gunfire. Now, I want to reiterate that these are only the incidents that involve gunfire. So I just wanted to, obviously, for the context of this body, share the numbers that involved gunfire. Obviously, we've had, I'm not sure if many of you have seen the plethora of media interviews I've done over the course of yesterday that was aired yesterday evening, talking about those incidents. We also released a video of one of the incidents downtown as we try to solicit help from our community and trying to identify not only who is responsible for that gunfire, but in an attempt to mitigate any future gunfire incidents from those individuals. So it was a rough week for us here in the city, obviously. My goal has really been to try to engage with our community. We've seen in the 6 incidents we had over the past week, very low cooperation and engagement from not only the victims, but the witnesses that were in the area at the time that some of these incidents occur, which obviously makes it a bit difficult for our investigators to thoroughly and accurately and competently get to the bottom of what's going on. And so our focus here at the police department is really two-pronged. Obviously, we want to investigate the incident and bring justice to those victims. But two, we want to investigate it and see what, if any nexuses exist, so we can be a bit proactive instead of reactive, and see what we can do to alleviate future gun violence in terms of is there ongoing feuds or anything like that that maybe somehow as a law enforcement agency, as we partner with community agencies, what kind of resources can we bring to ensure that these feuds or whatever are de-escalated, so we don't see the violence in the future. So that's been our goal through our investigative process. With that, I'll be happy to take and answer to the extent I can any questions that you may have regarding the numbers that I've shared with you, or perhaps anything that I've said here in the past few minutes. I see a question on text. How many of these incidents this year occurred during the COVID lockdown period, reopening period since March 18th? I don't have the answer to that question, but Caitlin sitting behind me, she will take notes, and we can certainly make sure you get the answer to that question. Question from Courtney Penn. Do you anticipate the lack of cooperation due to fear of retaliation or the desire to enlist payback on their own? Absolutely. That is definitely a part of why people are reluctant to talk with police, and is a very valid concern. That's why I spoke earlier, of our goal of trying to use community services that's available to offer to people when they do talk to the police, that we can ensure or do our very best to make sure that they are in a safe environment after they speak with us. But this is a very unique challenge, not only for law enforcement, but for our community as well. But that is definitely a concern. Is there any correlation found in the recent incidents where the End Racism mural installed last weekend? No, there was no correlation in terms of the End Racism mural downtown, none at all. So that's very good news to hear, obviously. I hope that answers your question. I see one more question. Has there been any increase in non-firearm violence over the same period? Yeah, obviously that would require some extra analysis, but I do believe we have some statistics here, and I'll allow him to pull that up on his phone real quick so we can take a look. Let's see, non-firearm related violence. So obviously these statistics are not broken down between firearm and non-firearm, but when you look at, for instance, robbery, in order for robbery to occur, there has to be some threat of violence, which may or may not include a weapon. Those numbers year to date for 2019 was 49 incidents, and in the year 2020, robberies are 48 incidents. So year to date, we're just down one. So I would consider that running consistent with what we had done last year as well. And in terms of non-firearm, I would have to take each category and just analyze each one of those incidents and see what involved the firearm and what didn't. So it's very hard for me to give those those numbers without doing further analysis. Shakira had a question. Is the data from 2018 and 2019 also up to July 13th, or is that just a year? Yes, the numbers I gave you, all of them consisted of January 1st to July 13th.
Not 2018. Those were county.
Oh, 2019, I'm sorry.
2020.
Is the data from 2018 to 2019? Yes, that's correct.
Calendar year.
So, see, 2018
Uh,
is the full year, and 2020 is through July 3rd.
Yeah, year, the full
That's
year.
the
for
whole
2020.
year.
These are the full 2 years,
That's the whole year.
calendar year, year to date.
And this is just, 2020 just till July, the rest of the whole year.
Gotcha. Yes, I'm being told that those numbers 2018 and 2019 is for the full year.
Bluetooth disconnected.
Full year.
Bluetooth connected.
And that's the one I showed you about the gun violence I'm speaking to, with specific emphasis on homicides, aggravated assaults, and domestic aggravated assaults. Does that answer your question? Mark Hamill, stabbings. So basically our numbers so far this year are about what we have seen for the entire last year. Are you speaking, Mark, are you speaking for the homicides, aggravated assaults, and domestic aggravated assaults that spoke of? So as we stated just a little bit earlier, 2018 and 2019 were for the full year. And so far this year, we've had 4. So I would say the answer to your question is, year to date, again, it would take further analysis to see how many we had in 2018 from January 1st to July 13th. We can certainly do that, if you like, but I can't accurately answer that question without looking at the numbers further. We are making a note of some of the questions, the impromptu questions that you are asking, and we'll be able to provide the answer to those in a follow-up email.
Thank you, Chief Furman. If we do not have any other questions, I would like to welcome Mayor Lee to have a few words.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me thank all of you for your work here on this committee task force, and all of you were selected for your expertise and insight that you bring to the table. Let me say, as the chairman said earlier, chairwoman, we're in a moment. We're in a moment now where violence is really striking hard across the country. But I want to make sure that you all continue to do the work you're doing, but we have to, and I say we, because I'm involved in the council, and we would like to really try to resolve, or try in some way to assure the community that we're doing all we can do to stem this gun violence. I know you do, and I am, and I hear a lot from the public that every week it seems as though there's a shooting. There's a shooting somewhere in our community, and I think we can do better than that. We're going to have to work on it, and I know there's some things that you all will be looking at. As I see now, you all will have a line item in the budget. Now, anytime you have a line item in the budget, people are going to expect some results from somewhere or something. And I'd like for you to do whatever you can, and I know you will, to try to put something out there that'll help stem this tide, and at least help the police apprehend some of these offenders. And I've always been a proponent of putting reward money out. I think people talk when there's some reward money out, and there's some different opinions on that. Some cities still do that to a degree, but maybe we can think, some things that we can do, and I know you all have made a list of recommendations. I want you all to feel the urgency that we have. And council realizes that all of you all coming together can work to make this community even safer. So I just want to let you know we appreciate what you're doing. It's important to us. Right now, a large percentage of my inquiries and complaints from the public is, what are we doing with guns? What are we doing with guns, and what's the answer? So again, thank you for what you do. Your work is vitally important. It's vitally important, and we've got to be ready to go forward with something. So I ask you to continue to work hard and to help us as we go forward in this all-American city that we have. But it's just a concern, and I know you all are concerned. So thank you for your service. Your work is critically important to our community. And again, hopefully that if there's anything we can do on council to help you or to assist you where you need it, please advise. And I'm sure Vice Mayor Cobbs will be doing that. So thank you again, and I look forward to even more recommendations from you as we go forward. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor Lee. And before I pass this back off to Joe, who will give us instructions as to where, which working groups we will be going to. If you're unsure about what working group you're going to, or you'd like to request a certain group, please feel free to put that in the chat box. And then I also wanted to add, and not to say that it's directly correlated, but there has, I would say, over the nation been a big increase in gun sales since coronavirus as well. Just like toilet paper and everything else, those were things that were flying off of the shelves. And so, as a task force, we try to look at all angles and making sure that those gun sales are not getting into the hands they shouldn't be getting into, and with thefts and making sure they're being properly stored, and because people do break into cars and take weapons, and we also know a lot of people obtain them illegally. And so, with the increase in aggregated violence and, gun sales, there's definitely something there that we will be looking at. But, I believe that some of the issues that have arisen since coronavirus, such as loss of jobs and closings of schools and summer programs, are all things that we hope to be able to address and come up with solutions for, as well as some of the previous issues that we've already been working on. Because I do believe that what is going on in the nation has definitely contributed greatly to this increase that we have seen in non-deadly gun violence. But I thank Chief Roman again. It's great to see. I believe this time last year, I don't remember, but I want to say we had 8 to 9 homicides in the summer, maybe around August. And so we are definitely down, way down for the year. And we would like to keep it that way. And we would also like for those other incidences to be on the decrease. And so just think about that and think about how you can contribute to your working groups. And we do have instructions for those, and so I will pass that back off to Joe. And hopefully he can share his screen again so that we can get further instructions.
Thank you, Shakira. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, I'll take that as a silent yes.
It's a little low, Joe, a little low.
Okay. All right. So first of all, I just want to review the working groups. I believe everyone on the call today has been assigned to a working group. Some people expressed interest in participating in multiple working groups, but for today's purpose, we placed you in one. If you are able to clone yourself and be in 2 or 3 at the same time, I'll let you work that out. So Safer Neighborhoods is going to be facilitated by Nicole Ross and Natasha Saunders. And those of you that we pre-identified to go in, you will go into a room with them. Education, Ryan Bell and Tasha Steele are going to facilitate that. Those of you who are in reducing gang violence and recidivism are going to stay in this main room with me. Antoine Calloway had a family emergency and Rabbi Cohen is not with us. So I'm going to at least get the group started in facilitation. City Services and Rapid Response, Shakira Williams and Stacy Shepard, you will be facilitating that group. And then Marketing and Communications is Courtney Penn. So here are basic guidelines that we want to follow. We're hoping to allow an hour of time for these working groups to work because today's purpose is to really begin to look at the recommendations and create SMART goals for each one. So when you get into your working group breakout room, the first thing we'd like for you to do as a group is identify a recorder, someone who can take notes that can then be submitted to Shakira following the meeting. Secondly, we'd like for each of you to introduce yourself, who you represent, and how you see your work intersecting with your working group. Thirdly, we're going to ask the facilitator then to review your recommendations. Fourthly, what, if any, impact has COVID-19 had on these recommendations? And are there any adaptations that need to be made? And then the bulk of your conversation will be identifying 3 to 5 SMART goals for at least one recommendation. And a SMART goal is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And then as an end piece to that, take a look at budget recommendations. So we really want you to focus on 3 to 5 SMART goals for at least one recommendation. If you finish that for one recommendation, you can move on to other recommendations in your working group, just as time allows. And the way that Zoom is set up, it will allow us to give you an indicator of when everyone will come back into the main room. And then when we come back into the main room, we'll have each facilitator report back a summary of your conversation. Are there any questions about the process?
Joe, there are a couple of questions in the chat box. One, I wanted to allow Officer Johnson to actually formally introduce his cause. And then there was a question from somebody who is unsure of what group that they're in, if you want to take a look at that while Officer Johnson is speaking.
Yeah, thank you, Shakira. Josh Johnson here. Behind me is my new sergeant who's in charge of the community engagement team, which encompasses crime prevention, which is Officer Nick Comis and I, and then the community resource officer. So a lot of the heavy lifting that we're going to be doing is through his unit. So I wanted to make sure that he was introduced. So. You can say hello.
How you doing? Sergeant Jimmy Price. Like I said, I'm new to the unit, but I'm here in this meeting, so I'm eager to learn what you guys do so I can contribute what I can.
Thanks, Shakira.
Okay, to answer a couple questions, Amazetta, you are in Safer and Healthier Neighborhoods. And Anne Marie, for today's purposes, we put you in City Services, and we've placed Amanda Holcomb in, hold it, let me double check that. Hold on a sec, yeah. Anne Marie, you're in City Services, and Amanda, we've put in the marketing group. And
Perfect, thanks.
Katie, you are in education. So if for some reason someone ends up in a working group that you are not comfortable with, just let us know in the chat room, and we'll make that change. Arwen, you are in, hold on a second. City Services. We're going to move you into the subgroup rooms. Tiffany is going to wave her Zoom wand, and you will, voila, go into these rooms. And yeah, I've seen it happen, and it's quite amazing.
Fingers crossed.
So, but like I said, if there are any issues, just type it in the chat box, and we'll try.
One.
Gessler. Troy needs to go into Safer Neighborhoods. Troy, we're going to move you to Safer Neighborhoods. Thanks for being here. Elliot's here, yeah. And Steven should be in City Services. Steven, we're moving you to City Services. Okay. Who is RADAY? And Hannah, we will move you to Safer Neighborhoods. Thank you. All right. Can whoever identifies as RADAY, R-A-D-A-Y, please let us know your preference. Okay. They're gone. All right. Any of the media, if you have a preference on which room you'd like to go into, we could assign you to a room, or we can just keep you here with us in reducing gang violence and recidivism. All right. That's the first time I've had media be absolutely non-responsive to anything.
Me too.
All right.
Yeah.
So welcome. Why don't you all go ahead and unmute those of you who are here in this room for reducing gang violence and recidivism. I know, Elliot, that you and Jamie, is that you, Jamie, the chat boxes? Okay, and Jim.
Yes.
I believe all of you were part of the meeting that Antoine hosted last week. And so you've covered a lot of territory already. What I really wanted to do with you today is kind of get a summary from the work that you did. Alice, I believe you may be new to this part of the conversation. So we're glad you're here. Alice does with DSS and had particular interest in the child support matter. So we're glad that you're here, Alice.
I think Alice was actually on the meeting as well.
You what, Jamie?
I think Alice was on the meeting as well that we had previously.
Is Maggie Marshall? Okay, she's the reporter. Okay, let's find out who Ray Day is.
I removed someone. Ray, whoever's identifying as Ray Day, could you let us know who you are?
Okay. All right. So why don't we do, first of all, could one of us in this group be a recorder? Who would feel comfortable doing that?
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Jamie. Let's just take a moment. I know you've all done this previously, but it will be helpful to me and for the purpose of recording here to just introduce yourself, who you represent, and how you see your work intersecting with reduction in gang violence and recidivism. Elliot, have you go first, please.
Yes, my name is Elliot Major. I'm the owner, director of the Dorcas Home. I operate a community reentry program, and specifically, I deal with ex-offenders. Therefore, putting in recidivism is part of our mission and our overall purpose of even existing as a program. So, some aspects of the gang violence dealt with recidivism, and that's why I was invited, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Elliot. Jim.
Jim O'Hare. I'm the youth care administrator for the city of Roanoke and been involved in juvenile justice for about 30 years. Thing that makes this an area of interest of me is we have a lot of references, a lot of resources available, and we make those available to the judges and to everybody in the juvenile justice system. So if there are specific resources that can help in the prevention of gangs, I have a lot of those already cataloged and ready to share anytime. So, you know, anything that I can do to help in that way, I'll be glad to do.
Thank you, Jim. Jamie.
I'm Jamie Starkey. I'm the Director of Community Services at Family Service of Roanoke Valley. In my role at Family Service, I work with the youth development folks and prevention services. And I also work with anger management and batterers intervention programming for folks who may be court-ordered or self-identified as having challenges with those behaviors. So I'm interested in this because we know that a large percentage of individuals who of aggravated assault data and assault in general are domestic violence related. So that brings a special interest to me.
Thank you, Jamie. Alice, are you able to unmute and introduce yourself? I know she told me she was going to be in listening mode. All right. All right.
Mr. Vice Mayor, Alice was very helpful in the committee meeting that we had, and I think she would be a big part of what we do here, especially in the child support. Another recommendations that you have is right up her alley, and she had some really good input in the meeting.
Great. We will jump right into that. I know that you all had a really thorough chance to review the recommendations. And so from your conversation, I'd be curious to hear what emerged for you all as priorities in terms of the recommendations, because you all as a group have at least, I think, 6 or 7 recommendations. 7. Can you just kind of summarize for me what emerged for you through your conversation in terms of priorities regarding these recommendations? And I apologize, Antoine was going to send me a summary, but he had a family emergency, so I haven't been able to see that.
I'm trying to remember the priorities without having them in front of me, being able to remember what we are and the dialogue around them.
Just review them, we just do like a simple review of them, and then just do some, if there were any specific SMART goals that emerged for you out of those, would that be helpful?
That'd be great.
All right, the first one was to encourage greater collaboration between the task force, Roanoke Police Department, and community partners to increase community education and awareness on location, structure, and activities of Roanoke City gangs. Do any of you recall any specific action items?
I don't recall any specific actions out of that. I know there was a lot of dialogue around getting more engagement and more data. And I want to at least say for myself, and again, I can't say specifically, but when I heard about the other gentleman on the Roanoke Police Department, who was part of the task force, I think it would be a great recommendation if we could have one of those members as part of the gang task force, so that we could have easily accessible or more easily access to the data around gangs and what's the latest that's going on with them.
I think that's a good recommendation, and it aligns somewhat with, I think, the second recommendation, which is asking that 2 members of the study committee be appointed to serve on the CARE initiative, which is a collaborative between the district attorney's office, the Roanoke Police Department, ATF, and Roanoke City Schools. And I don't know the status of that right now. Did you all discuss the status of that at all during your meeting? Okay. So one goal that I have is to add someone from the Roanoke Police Department to this working group on a regular basis for direct insights and data on activities related to gangs and gang violence in the community. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other SMART goals that you would identify under that first recommendation in terms of increasing greater collaboration? What about the community education and awareness piece? Jim, you mentioned having a plethora of resources available to the community, and Ellie, well, all of you, with the work that you do, what would you see as a tangible goal, like a first goal that we could create to address the educational and awareness aspect of this work?
Mr. Vice Mayor, in the chat, I posted the National Gang Center's comprehensive model for community gang reduction. It's hard work. It's very difficult. I think in our group, Mr. Major probably has the closest finger on the pulse of it, but it is just requires its own public health intervention. And there are a lot of different ways that we could go about it, but it is long-term work. One thing I would also say, that just comes to mind is that the kind of work that's involved with it, Blue Ridge Behavioral Health has started the functional family therapy, which has been proven successful in the reduction of gang violence. And so that may be another avenue to look at. But the first of those types of resources that I have are it's in there, and there's a program that's attached to the link that I provided.
Okay. So perhaps a second goal could be to study this model and explore the viability of adopting a similar program for our community.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there may also be some things in the Cure Violence program that that would help in this area. I'm not exactly sure. I'm familiar with that program, but I don't know all the details of it.
I'm just going to make a note about the Cure Violence model because I know that's something that City Services is looking at, and there's going to be likely some crossover, and the more we can do that in all of these working groups, the better, because all of this is connected.
Yes, sir.
All of it's connected. Anything else under that recommendation? Okay, the second one was affirm the efforts of the Roanoke Care Initiative and request that 2 members of the working group be appointed to serve on the care team. Did you all discuss that at any length in your meeting, the Care Initiative?
I don't recall that, no.
Okay. So I think our first SMART goal is to find out the status of the Care Initiative.
Yeah.
And then let me ask this. Are there 2 of you who would be willing to participate in that initiative as representatives of the working group?
Joe, this is Alice.
Hey, Alice. Oh, you muted again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm not good at technology, and it shows. I'd be willing to do that. I just don't know anything about it, but I'm more than happy to help out in any way.
Well, I think with that, since that initiative seemed to come from the district attorney's office, Daniel Bubar was my contact for that. I think we can put you in touch with him.
Okay.
To at least check the status of the Care Initiative.
Sure.
Involved in their ongoing work. Anyone else? I may also see if Antoine or Rabbi Kathy, as they're part of the study committee, would do that. But it'd be good to have some additional folks. Anyone else from this group interested?
I'm interested, but I want to ask: is that information online? I learned a long time ago, don't volunteer for something I don't have a clear understanding. And so, but if it's online, I can go and look at it. Maybe it's posted on the city's website or something that makes give me a link, and I can just research it myself.
What I would probably recommend is, why don't I do this, Elliot? Why don't I reach out to Dan Bubar following this meeting, and I will find out where the information for the Care Initiative is accessible, and then link you into that.
That'll work. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on that recommendation? All right, the third one is identify transformative best practices on reducing gang violence by sending key members of the task force and community to observe municipalities experiencing a reduction in gang violence and learn about their models of practice. And this was actually connected with a specific budget request. This, of course, was pre-COVID-19, when everything was open to travel and engage. Did you all discuss this and what this might look like in terms of shifting, rather than maybe direct municipality visits to, it may be a combination of that as well as online meetings with officials in other communities. Did you all discuss that recommendation?
I do recall discussing it. I want to say that we kind of glanced past some of it. It sounded to me that it was already kind of settled as to the cities. The recommendations, as a matter of fact, the wording was we were not going to discuss whether those models were good or not, but that it was almost like a settled law. It was already settled in that we were going to look at those cities and take the best aspects from each one of those, even to the point of I may be remiss in saying that it's probably the people who are going to go or visit was already settled as well. So we were just looking for what was the output of that meeting. That's how I took it. So I didn't spend a lot of time adding any input to it.
Well, that's news to me. So we'll have to follow up on that and see, because I know we were considering, you know, there's an aspect of the police department that does this kind of work and knows some best practices. But we wanted to be able to look at some communities that are comparable in size to Roanoke, just to determine those best practices, which I think is part of our responsibility as a working group.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that thought, I remember there was one thing that I shared with one of my team members here after the meeting was, I thought that the cities were not comparable to Roanoke, but that was my own, that was my personal opinion. So that doesn't mean it.
Elliot and all of you, I know, Jim, you shared the model about from the National Gang Center. In your research and in your interactions and just your own experience with this, what are you seeing as some comparable localities or communities that we should look at? I've heard about Oakland's plan and how they've sipped, and I don't know how it compares population wise, but it seems like they've had some pretty significant success in reducing gang violence in Oakland. That's one model I'm aware of, but I'm curious if there are other models or cities that you're aware of that we should take a look at.
And, you know, Mr. Vice Mayor, because the gang problem out west is so different than what we're experiencing, and it's so much more intense and so much more diverse. A lot of Hispanic gangs in rural areas of California. I'm not sure that it's I mean, it may be educational, but I'm not sure it's instructive for what we might need to do here. I don't know what might be a comparable situation. There may be some localities that we're overlooking because all of the attention goes to Atlanta and Florida and places like that, I'm not aware that there's something that we should be, this is really going to be a one-to-one, something that we can bring to Roanoke. There are a couple of other things that I added to the chat list, though, if you're able to pull those up at some point. That, and I think you're right, you know, post-COVID, there are a lot more webinars, there are a lot more training opportunities online that might be better for the budget as well. So there are a lot of opportunities that might be able to be taken advantage of without travel.
Okay. maybe what we could do is, as one SMART goal in this, is to identify 3 comparable localities and investigate information regarding efforts that they're working on.
Yeah.
And then secondly, identify 1 or 2 best practice training opportunities that we could participate in to develop out a model for use locally. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah. Yes. And I actually will be glad to look into that and see what I can find out for you too.
Right. How does that sound to you all, Elliot and
Yeah, no, sounds great to me. As I said, I thought it was already settled that we were going to look at those cities, and I just didn't think all of my background says they were apples and oranges compared to Roanoke.
That's really helpful to know. The next recommendations, the next 2 actually have to do with reducing recidivism in connection with the Roanoke City Jail. And I tried to listen to as much of the recording of your meeting that Antoine sent me, and it seemed like you did spend some time talking about these 2. What are some recommendations that, or SMART goals that you'd like to see? The first one was specifically about improving access to programs, education, counseling, and spiritual guidance to improve the odds of reducing recidivism. The second one was to ensure that returning citizens upon exit from jail or prison have direct access to employment opportunities. So one is more internal in terms of what folks have access to, and one is more the transitional piece as they're returning, and what within that transitional piece, what practices and opportunities can help ensure that returning citizens have access to the things they need to reduce recidivism. Is that clear as mud?
Yeah.
Joe, there was a discussion on our call last week or whenever that, and I think Antoine brought this up, that he felt that the jail had limited resources and that they might not be able to spend resources for education and spiritual, activity and those kind of things, because often people are in jail for a very short period of time. Now, I don't know anything about, I don't know the details of that, but I believe that is what he was talking about. So maybe the external goal might be something we might want to work on more than the internal one. That's just a thought.
I think we had dialogue about the difference in Roanoke City Jail and the regional jail about length of stay and how long people are able to receive services. And I don't know that we ever really came to an agreement on that. I think Antoine's experience is Roanoke City Jail keeps people for a pretty long time, and Mr. Major's take is that it's a much more short term, and I don't know that we ever came to consensus. I do think there are opportunities and conversations to be had about services that can begin in the jail setting and then be supported and continued within the community. For example, our healthy relationships and anger management programs, I just finished writing a grant, fingers crossed, that would fund those services within a jail setting and then allow folks upon re-entry to continue participation, a seamless transition into the services that we currently offer here at Family Service. So I think when we talk about services in place in the jail, I would encourage us to think about how the services that begin there don't have to end there, that there can be support upon re-entry that allows them to continue those services.
That's a great point, because that continuum is really critical in terms of just that process of, you know, being incarcerated, then leaving, and then having access to the things that are needed. Elliot, you see that on a daily basis. What do you think, what are your reflections on this continuum of effective programs that might begin in jail or in prison? Because we would locally, I guess we'd be talking about the Roanoke City Jail, but also the West Virginia Regional Jail.
I think that's where I think the conversation might have gotten slightly spirited. I know that was a lot of discussion, and I'm still of the opinion, the data says so, that jails are not, at least the city jail isn't the starting. Although I do agree that some things can be started there, but when you look at the time to process, book, assess a person, and that starts with counseling, case management, a lot of that at the very beginning. It all has a bearing on how long that person is going to be stable enough to be able to get all that done. I can't say for sure that the city jail is a starting point. I just know that the jail is far more transient than the regional jail. And again, the regional jail acts as a prison. Just even though it has jail in the title. But one of the recommendations, at least one of the suggestions I made, is that we look at what the reentry program entails at the Western Region, because I'm very familiar with that program. And they do have a lot of services that they can conduct while someone is a resident of that facility. And part of my relationship with them is we actually act as a conduit to continue those services after the fact. But I say all that to say we should talk about reentry in general, not just whether it's through the city jail or through the regional jail, but if there's anyone coming back into this community out of incarceration in some place, because a majority of the people who come back to this community are coming back and they're not coming back through the jail. So are those services available? Is it set up? You know, how do we bridge that gap between all of the service providers, you know, Virginia Cares, Goodwill, there's a host of them, so I'm not going to try to name all of them. Do we have a comprehensive citywide reentry kind of coordinated goal or plan when it comes to that? Because a lot of times, and I deal with it on a daily basis, so I'm speaking from experience. A lot of times people resort to desperate behaviors out of lack of options. So if we're not sitting there giving them those options, they're going to resort to whatever it is. You know, the common thing that we always say is at the end of the day, a man is going to eat. So he's either going to do it the right way or he's going to do it the wrong way, but he's going to survive. And without those options that we prefer him or her to take, they're going to fall into whatever options that's going to provide that necessary thing. And it can be more comprehensive. It can be, there's so many good things. There's so many different organizations doing so much good work. How do we capture all of that in, you know, in one, you know, repository of things, so that once we identify a person that may need it, that we can put them in the right path all the way, all the time. So, I don't know, maybe I didn't answer your question, Vice Mayor, but.
I think it's sort of two separate conversations or two separate goals to have, with having services within the jails, and also having a coordinated response for offender reentry in our community. And I don't do a lot with offender reentry, so Mr. Major, you're going to be the expert on that. But I know I was for many years involved in the efforts around homelessness in our community. And there was a very coordinated response with all service providers gathering on a regular basis and maintaining communication, looking for gaps in service, et cetera. I don't know if that exists for reentry, but if it doesn't, perhaps that's a SMART goal that we have to bring those folks to a table and start that process of a coordinated community response.
I was just going to suggest that as our lead SMART goal in this area, that we first of all identify, ask the question, is there a kind of a continuum of services like the Blue Ridge Continuum of Care, which addresses homeless services and accessibility? Is there a similar comprehensive effort in this area? And if not, why don't we serve as the catalyst group to bring those programs to the table and work on developing a reentry comprehensive plan and continuum? That's just a minor project.
Yeah.
That's huge.
I think that's exactly where Antoine was with it too. You know, he did mention that he wanted to get more information from the sheriff, and that, yeah, the idea of a comprehensive plan upon release would be the goal.
Okay. Why don't we do that? And then as a second SMART goal, I think, Jamie, to your point, I think it's healthy for us to review programs that exist in the jail. Because I do think it's accurate that the jail population is much more transitional or transient than the prison population. And I know that there are some limited resources, but I think for us to know actually what the programs are and what, if any ways, we can help expand those. I think the program you mentioned regarding the Healthy Relationships and Anger Management program is a great program. And if we can find a way to be in relationship with the jail in such a way to collaborate on these types of programs, that just helps contribute to that continuum, but at the level of the jail rather than the prison. Yeah. Why don't we put those two goals down? One is the big one, and this one is a smaller one, but they're both important. The next one is, I think, where Alice is really helpful. This,
yep.
Yeah, this one.
That's me.
Hey, Alice.
Hey, Joe.
Our intention as a task force in these recommendations was not to really be involved in the legislative piece of it, but we brought this here because we were concerned that if out of this recommendation there were any proposals that needed to be addressed legislatively, potentially the city could add that to our legislative agenda that we present every year to the General Assembly and House of Delegates and the Senate. So that's one piece of it. But Alice, can you talk a little bit about this recommendation and what we might identify as a SMART goal to get this started? You want me to read?
Go ahead, read it to me, if you would.
Work with the General Assembly and judicial system, create an incentive-based alternative program designed to empower incarcerated persons through more family engagement, community navigator training, and personal development skills to return to society with reduced child support debt and the ability to support their family system and reduce recidivism. There's a lot there.
There is a lot. I can talk specifically about the child support piece, but I don't know that I could talk about all the other pieces. I shared with folks on our last call that Antoine talked about what he thought the state of the law in Virginia was, which he was correct. The law right now is It's based on case law, not statutes passed by the General Assembly, that if you have a child support obligation and then you become incarcerated, you can't get that child support obligation either reduced or eliminated, because the case law says that your incarceration is based on a voluntary act on your part. So that means you're voluntarily unemployed. So that's the state of the law right now in Virginia, and it's been that way for a long time. The other thing I explained to the group was that a federal regulation was issued by the federal government almost 4 years ago now, 3.5 years ago, that requires states that have law, like Virginia, to eliminate them or to make incarceration not a reason not to be able to get a modification in your child support obligation. And Virginia has to make a change in its law by in the 2022 General Assembly session at the latest. I don't know if it'll happen in 2021, but there's always a possibility. After our call, I did a little summary about the law in Virginia and what the options were. And I sent it to Antoine and Kathy Cohen and asked them to share it with everybody else on the call. But I don't know if you all have seen that document. Have you all gotten that?
We are no for me.
Alice, can you send that to me and then I'll send it out to the working group?
Yeah, I will send it. Sure. So basically, there are some things in the works already that it's going to be a mandate. The other thing, and I represent the Division of Child Support Enforcement, which is part of the State Department of Social Services. The other element is, what is the state agency that I represent going to do for people we know that are incarcerated now in the meantime. So right now the agency is not, if somebody is incarcerated and the other parent asks for child support, we are not obligating people because they're incarcerated. That's a relatively new policy. What the agency is dealing with now is how to address the people that are incarcerated, to see what is the best way to get them a modification, because we all understand that if you're incarcerated, you're not earning any money and you can't pay your support. And when you get out and you have a large arrears, it's very discouraging, and often discourages people from they just give up and don't pay anything rather than trying to pay a small amount. So those are some things that we're working on now. So some of this may take care of itself, but there is still more work to do. And of course, I'm only talking about the cases that are actually at the Division of Child Support Enforcement. This doesn't necessarily address any private cases. I mean, it could, but they aren't necessarily in our caseload. So if there's a private case and somebody's incarcerated, we wouldn't necessarily know about it at all.
So could we say as one SMART goal for this area that we are reviewing a summary of case law regarding child support and incarceration?
Okay, and I can certainly, I did not send the case law with everybody, but I will send that in addition to what I have already prepared when I send it to you. You'll get it in 2 different documents.
Are there any other pieces of this that we want to look at this point? How are we doing on time?
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Mr. Vice Mayor, can you repeat the SMART goal as you stated it, just for my notes?
To review the summary of case law regarding child support and incarceration.
Thank you.
I think that's our first step. Okay. Then the last one is create additional community navigator career positions and first-year wraparound resources for returning citizens to ensure successful reentry into society. Did you all discuss this one?
I don't remember making it to that one.
I don't think we did, Mr. Vice Mayor. You know, I know we were pretty hurried, and I don't think we got to this one.
Why don't we spend a little bit of time talking about this? Because I think part of the idea behind this was to what kinds of career positions, and this may go back to the continuum that we talked about, the kind of comprehensive services that are not only the service that stabilize someone who's returning to the community, but then gives them access to employment that is sustainable and career opportunities. And maybe Elliot, you might be the go-to on this, but what are we aware of in our community and region regarding career opportunities? I know that when I've talked with people who are returning citizens, it seems to be very challenging to find A, sustainable employment, and then B, employment that pays enough in regard to to be able to provide for an individual or for a family. And what are the barriers that people encounter when they're seeking employment? Sorry, that's just those are a lot of random thoughts, but.
Well, I can take from the very beginning to work backwards from what your questions were. The mere fact that they've got a criminal record is the greatest barrier of all. And an employer, does not, legally, can discriminate against you because of that over here. And so that makes their career choices and options somewhat limited. And usually it's limited to service or non-skilled or non-trade activities, which falls into your next question of, yes, but that's not enough for me to survive on. McDonald's and those types of places are not livable wages. So you have to talk about some of the things that they can do. Construction is always one. Construction, pays very well, but then there's a lot of barriers. Sometimes those barriers are transportation, because when people are coming out, it's not just they come out and they've got everything. Some guys come out and they don't have a driver's license, so transportation is a barrier. We deal in transitional housing as part of our program. So one of the things we ask is, where's the guy going to lay his head? So housing becomes an issue. So the very, very basic things that we gloss over because they're just part of our daily life, those become barriers. There's about 8 things that we talk about. I'll be more than happy to share it with the group. But when you start talking about some of those barriers, there's about 8 specific things that we talk about. And some of the people on the call can attest to that, because there's mental health issues, there's behavioral health issues, there's substance abuse issues, and all of those can play a part in it, in their employment. You know what I mean? Because if a guy has to go to Blue Ridge for 3 times a day counseling, an employer may say, I don't want to deal with that. That's just like FMLA for us, when we're at a job. And whether they discriminate against that, maybe or maybe not, you don't know, or when it comes to their choices. So we deal a lot with trying to educate. I think one of the things that we can really do is, which my team here does with a lot of employers, is how do we educate employers to some of the aspects, both good and bad, of hiring someone coming back into the community. Because it starts at the top. If the CEO or the hiring managers and HR directors understand some of the things that a person may be dealing with, they're the ones who are going to make that ultimate hiring decision. So educating them, you know, through SHRM, through Rotary Club, through employment commissions, you know, how do you educate the employers of some of the barriers that they may have to make them more accessible to, or at least not accessible, more open to hiring ex-offenders?
Elliot, is there any existing program or training opportunity with Virginia CareerWorks?
We've talked to Virginia CareerWorks. But we actually sent a lot of referrals over there. I would say it's good, but is it as widespread? And a lot of times, you know, we want to say this one thing helps. But again, you're talking about, okay, I can train you. I can give you a resume. I can give you a bus pass. I can give you a gas card. Here's what I can't do as Virginia CareerWorks. I can't make that employer hire you. And so we're starting from one end of the spectrum when it may be good to also start at the other end of the spectrum. You know, how do I convince this person that this is a good candidate? You know what I'm saying? While I'm making the candidate, I need to know that there's a job available. That's why I love job training, but training for what? If there's nothing, if there's no pot of gold at the end of that training, you just train me, you know, to be unemployed. You know, I got all my things over here. So it starts with the employers as well. You know what I'm saying? How do we get employers? Now there's incentives for employers. There's federal incentives for employers to hire ex-offenders. Do they know that? You know what I'm saying? Do they know that there's, you know, up to $4,000 or $5,000 tax credit, you know, for giving that person an opportunity? You know what I mean? So you got to say what, similar to military people transitioning, you know, we do a great job in this country of communicating and educating employers on the benefit of hiring our veterans. You know what I'm saying? Here are the aspects of X, Y, and Z. You know, as a veteran, I know that. Do we spend the same amount of energy and effort in telling them, here's how to give a person a second chance in society?
But it sounds like an immediate SMART goal would be to create a training program and find out who we could partner with to educate employers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just employees in general. And then what are the incentives? You know, because, you know, everyone wants to know what's in it for me. You know, I mean, you want the benevolence of giving a person a chance. But sometimes, hey, you know, if Joe can give me a $5,000 tax credit, you know, well, that's a nice little nudge to give Joe a chance.
I agree that I think the work needs to focus on the front end with getting employers. So when you say a training program, Mr. Vice Mayor, are you talking about for employers? Okay.
That's what I heard Elliot say. That we would work, one of our goals would be to either find an existing training program and work to identify employers in the area to present this training program to. That's one way to do it. If there's an existing training that we could use locally and connect with employers.
I've seen this work in the homelessness and in refugee services. With working with employers to convince them to hire those folks. So I think there's some models that in the city that may already be operational that we could talk to folks and find out how that would translate to working with offender reentry. Would that potentially be a SMART goal?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Well, yeah, I was going to say within the city, we could tap into economic development. They have access to a lot of employers. Small Business Development Association through the regional chamber. I think if I know that Virginia CareerWorks works with a lot of employers just in the spectrum of the work that they do. That might be another way to approach this.
You've got your Grandin Village.
Williamson Road Business Association. I mean, there are a lot of community-based business organizations and associations that bring in a lot of employers, but there are different types of employment. So you've got your service industry, as you mentioned, you've got manufacturing and industry, you've got small businesses that cover a wide spectrum. I don't know at what point, how best we kind of break that down to reach as much of that spectrum as we can, or do we want to hone in? Is there a particular industry that we really want to hone in on first, or do we want to look at the bigger spectrum of just trying to reach as many employers as we can with this information?
And my opinion is you gotta fish in a much larger pond. You know what I mean? So you gotta spread it out, because everyone, I mean, there's only a certain amount of headcount that any one particular industry or organization is going to be able to hire. So you got to spread it out, you know, and there's personal preference as well. Some guys want to work inside, some guys want to work outside, you know, so I think that if we can go broad, that would be great. We can identify.
Sorry about that. I'm multitasking here.
We had someone pop in.
Is that clear, Jamie, in terms of a goal? Okay. I need to slip out to the bathroom for a minute. Can you all just talk briefly? We've gone through, Jamie, why don't you go back through the SMART goals that we've identified? And then let's talk for a few minutes about any budget implications. We don't have a large pool of money to draw from initially, but of these goals that we've set, what do we think are going to require or could be helped along with some sort of budget so that we could bring that back as we look to how we're going to distribute that 75,000 over all of the recommendations. Okay? And I'll be right back.
That last recommendation is one that I was thinking about in terms of budget. I don't know if the Cure Violence program comes with some funding that has community navigators, or if we need to look for grant funds for something like that, or if it's a part of the city budget. I mean, you know, a salary position's not going to go very far. I mean, it's going to tear into the budget in a big way. So we'd want to have additional funding. I don't think that reunification in the community is anybody's mandate, and I don't think that there are a dedicated funding stream for it, but there might be some criminal justice services money that applies to that sort of thing, or that it's flexible enough that it would be something that we could use for a case manager type position in the way that recommendation is talking about. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to explore some of those ideas and see if there's funding available for that. I don't know that I'll find anything, but I'm going to take a look.
It feels to me like the community, like the community navigator position would be working with individuals to help them find employment. And what I heard in our conversation was that the work needs to be done more on the other end of working with employers. Would it still be a community navigator, Jim? And
that's the recommendation. Yeah, that's the recommendation. I know we took that from the opposite way, and that's fine, you know, but just as far as this number 14 goes, you know, I'm just going to see if I can find something out about funding for that sort of thing. And I'm not sure, you know, that the larger gun task force ad hoc committee may have a better idea of where that is than I have, you know, so I don't know, but I'm gonna find out what I can about funding streams for flexibility in jail reentry.
Thank you. Tiffany, how many minutes do we have before the large group comes back together? 5 minutes. Okay. So what I have in our SMART goals are to add a Roanoke City member to this working group with this. I'm going to put all this into really fancy words before I print it out for you all and email it, but with specific interest in working with and giving us information about gang activity. That we will study violence prevention models already in place in other places and attempt to identify communities that are doing it well that do compare nicely with Roanoke. That we will find out the status of the CARE initiative, and we will identify 2 members of this working group to be represented in the CARE initiative. That we will identify 3 comparable localities and identify 1 to 2 comparable training opportunities as it relates to transformative models. That we will identify if there is a coordinated comprehensive plan for reentry in our community. That we will review programs in the jail and look for collaborative opportunities. That we will review a summary of case law regarding child support and incarceration. And Mr. Vice Mayor, if we can, I know I said yes, but there's been more dialogue since you stepped away about the SMART goal for the last initiative we were talking about. Are we crafting a SMART goal under that category around the hiring of a community navigator position?
I didn't hear that so much as a focus on training employees to the benefits of hiring or the aspects of hiring returning citizens and the federal incentives that are available.
And I would just, I know it's semantics, but I would say more educating employers versus community.
That seems a more realistic, considering our budget opportunities. Now, that being said, if a supplemental goal was to hire a community navigator to facilitate these kinds of trainings, and I don't know with existing programs if that already is in place. I don't, like TAP's program, Goodwill's program, I don't know if they already have people in those types of positions.
I think we would learn that when we identify the folks who would make up our coordinated community response or comprehensive plan. I think we would find out what is already existent during that process.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I don't know if the timing is right for this, but I liked what Elliot was saying around. So I heard sort of a PR or a marketing initiative around making employers aware of the benefits of giving folks a second chance.
Let's put that as another goal. I think you're right. As I was stepping away, Jim, I heard you talking about the cure violence model, and I know that one of our budget recommendations overall was to, let me find it here. You have a cure violence model assessment done for our community, and we just set a budget of $7,500. Not fully knowing what all of that would entail, but if that's something that comes up through city services, it seems like there are a lot of correlations to the work that this working group is doing as well, that we could benefit from that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, as you were walking away, and I'm sorry I brought it up at that time, was trying to mention that you know, I think the training of employers is our goal. But I also let the group know that I wanted to look into if there are existing funding streams. I'm not aware of jail reentry being anybody's mandate. And I don't know if Criminal Justice Services has funds for that sort of thing, or if they have flexible enough funds that we could use it for that sort of thing. So I'm just going to look into it and see what I can find out. I think the Navigator model is a really good one. You know, it works for cure violence. It works in a lot of larger cities, you know, have down to block captain type positions available. Somebody in the community with some lived resources, lived experience, and has some ability to provide information and training and resources, that sort of thing. So I'll see what I can find out. In any case, I don't know of any, but I'm going to at least check into it.
All right, I think we're back in. So thank you all. That was great work.
Everybody start
Yeah,
popping back in.
Over the next minute, it's ironic. While we were talking, I got a text from a school counselor here of a picture of an art project, and it's called Blood and Crip Turkey. And this was in the kindergarten to second grade range.
No.
I'll send it to you all just so you have a point of reference. I'm back. There's Shakira.
Hello.
Welcome back, everybody.
Thank you.
Kyra, do you want to guide us through our report backs from each group?
Yes. If you all would just like to give a really sweet and short just run through whatever goals or that you came up with. And actually, if you just want to share, I would just share one SMART goal. So it doesn't matter which one, just share one SMART goal. If you've had any adaptations because of COVID-19, please feel free to share that as well. And that's it. And so if you'd like, I can go ahead and start. For our group, Stacy actually had to leave early. She had to be somewhere, but she was our recorder. We did not have any of our recommendations really that need to be changed or altered due to COVID. And so we are grateful for that. And one of our SMART goals is to send an introductory email before our next meeting, July the 31st, to Allison at Council of Community Services regarding our task force goal to get fed up to a 501c3 nonprofit status. And that's just to initiate the process for them to attain that. All right, so if Safer Neighborhoods would like to report.
Absolutely, I will report. We talked about our fifth recommendation, which is to create positive and effective change in neighborhoods by addressing crime prevention through environmental design, cleanup projects, greening, enhanced lighting, and the areas of priority should include but not be limited to higher crime volume areas, zones most affected by gun violence. And what we decided that we would do is we would meet, we would gather in a meeting with Tanya from our neighborhood services office, the Roanoke Neighborhood Advocates, HUD Community Resources, with Keith Holland, and also bring in a city council member to put a meeting together within the next 30 days. And within that meeting, we want to be able to understand what resources are available and give and get feedback on what is needed in our communities. One of the things we want to do is meet with some stakeholders. For instance, the Roanoke Art Commission, Neighborhood Services Office, Valley Metro, Goodwill, Roanoke City Public Schools within the next 30 days. And we want to partner. And what we talked about is getting together and telling the stories of violence, how they've affected all the different sectors in our community, and turning that storytelling opportunity into actually an art project, getting those stories that are being told and let that become the artwork that goes along with it. Kind of piggybacking off of what was done in our streets, showing that, art can really bring about compassion, and telling those stories to see that we all have a lot of similar stories. We talked about potentially doing some GIS interactive screens, telling real life stories throughout the community. So that's what we're focusing on, and we're gonna make that happen, really. So we're excited about making that happen.
That sounds really exciting. Thank you.
Can I jump in with a question quickly?
Hmm?
This is Tim Harvey. If our committee is proposing that we're going to go meet with other people, will those meetings fall under the public notice because we're a city council approved agency, or can we just go meet with whoever and
As long as it's not more than 2 people, you're fine.
so only 2 people of our committee could go and meet to those meetings?
Correct.
Only 2 official members of your committee can. Now, if you have committee members who are not on our roll call, that doesn't count.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Do you want to report for your group?
In our group, you can't have them.
Oh, he's in yours? Okay, just kidding.
He is.
Why do
Sorry.
I in education? All right, so that would be Ryan Bell. I know he was on earlier. Oh, there he is.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be very brief. We had education for parents, stakeholders, and students. What we decided to do was early out focus our attentions on identifying stakeholders that would work with at-risk or high opportunity students and young adults. Look at maybe obtaining 5 of those stakeholders in that area. And we gave ourselves a 2-week time period around that, around identifying those particular stakeholders. And the reason why we decided to go that particular route, we had a conversation around the students and young adults who would be most beneficial in receiving this particular type of education. And then we looked at developing, researching and doing some development around some particular education models to deliver to our students and young adults. And then we'll move forward into parents after that.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we've got reducing gang violence and recidivism. So that would be Joe reporting out for us today.
Amy Starkey is going to report out for our group.
Okay.
So we were able to chat some about all of our recommendations, but I'll highlight a couple of them. One of the things that a goal that we have is to have a Roanoke City Police member who has experience working with gang violence in the city to join our group and add to our conversation. We talked about identifying if there is already a coordinated comprehensive plan for offender reentry in our community, and sort of taking the lead on beginning conversations and gathering people around that conversation, to review opportunities and programs within the Roanoke City Jail that could be continued upon reentry into the community. We did dialogue about child support debt for offenders coming back into the community, and it seems that there's already some legislative things in place or happening currently there. So we are going to review a summary of case law around child support and incarceration. And we are going to create an education program for employers and explore marketing opportunities around making employers aware of the benefits of hiring individuals with criminal histories and giving them a second chance. I think that's a very concise summary of our conversation.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, and last but not least is marketing and communications. So that would be Mr. Courtney Penn, Vice Chair.
Hello. Our small group, we had a great conversation and put together one SMART goal that we are planning to implement. The first thing that we talked about was that, communication, our role is to help support the other focus groups' efforts. So as your efforts move forward, it's going to be important that we be involved or help to kind of help you get the word out and so forth. We do believe that it's, that some type of overarching communication is important, but what's most important about it is that it is authentic, that it has stakeholders who really understand the situations and the challenges, well informing how we go about that. So to start things out, we are planning a session with a group of communications professionals and other stakeholders, some that were invited today, some that were not, that would involve, law enforcement, people who really understand the lived experience there, maybe the PIOs of the police and fire, EMS, Roanoke City Public Schools, and the city of Roanoke. And we anticipate this being a 2-hour session in which Chris Turnbull has graciously agreed to facilitate. And out of that would, come the formal plan of moving forward. That plan would undoubtedly involve, helping to try to structure that RFP that needs to be created, and also to develop some focus groups, for, that company or that organization or individual to help get the information that they need to move forward. We'd also like the leaders from the working groups to be a part of this. So we realized that this meeting would need to be publicly advertised. We've identified 2 potential dates for this and times. And if we need to go back to look for some more options, we will. But right now, September 9th from 9 to 11 and September 18th from 1 to 3 are the 2 dates that we'd like to hold. And as we start polling people, we would go with the date that we could get the majority of folks to attend. I think that's all I'd like to report now. We're really excited about this opportunity, and we look forward to moving the ball down the field.
Thank you. I would like to thank everybody who attended our meeting and working groups today. And we hope that you do come back in 2 weeks, July the 31st. I will pass this along to Joe.
Thank you, Shakira. Thank you all for your time today. Really appreciate your dedication and your insight. Amazing goals that have emerged just from our working groups today. For those of you who have summaries of those, would you please email them to Shakira? Shakira, can we type your email address into the, or I'll have Tiffany type it in here, or you can type it in. Whichever address you'd like to receive these summaries at. I will let you all know that on Monday we have city council meeting. I plan to just share a brief update with council on our work today. So thank you for that. Just wanted to make you aware of that. Again, we're going to meet again in 2 weeks, Friday the 31st at 10 a.m. We will send you notification about that. So put that on your calendars as we continue to build out these recommendations and these SMART goals. And what we will do subsequently is create a document that brings together all of these goals within the recommendations so that we can have that as a working document as we move forward. Any other questions? Can we give a big wave or a hand clap to Tiffany for helping us out today? She's been fantastic. And she's—
Thank you, Tiffany.
Yes, thank you.
There is a shared Google folder. If Kyra, do you have access to that link that you could put in the message box here? If not, we can send that out to the working group leaders.
I'm on a different computer, so actually I don't, but all of the working group leaders do have access to that particular Google Drive, and I can send another email out with the Google Drive link.
All right, thank you all so much for your time. I hope you have a good weekend.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.